What's the first thing you think about when you hear the words Alfa Romeo? Most people would say beautiful, timeless or alluring design. But for the petrol heads and Alfisti alike, design is just the invitation to the main event, the engine.
As with almost all iconic engines, however, time is almost up.
And this new 33 Stradale represents the beginning of the end for the Alfa Romeo V6.
So we decided to pay our respects to the history of Alfa Romeo's legendary cylinder layout in the most appropriate way possible. These engines have always been so full of character regardless of the car that they're in. But some cars feel especially suited to the Busso, such as this Roadster Zagato, which couldn't illustrate the point more perfectly. But that's not to say it didn't have its uses outside of convertibles.
Of course, we have to go way back before this SZ shocked the world in the 90s to see when the Busso V6 story started. We have to go back to the late 60s when Alfa was selling so many Giulia 4 cylinders it was gonna hit the 1 million mark, and when it wanted to enter the class above. So it called upon engine designer Giuseppe Busso to create a lightweight V6 to power its Alfetta and Alfa 6 models, and he created a 2.5 litre that would go on to birth a whole range of icons. You see, the Busso V6 boldly departed from the formula that made the Giulia inline 4 so famous. For starters, it used just one camshaft per cylinder bank, and it used valves that were placed at a tighter angle for the added bonus of fuel efficiency. Plus, the engine's banks were placed at 60 degrees, so it could add compactness to its lightness.
But there was one major problem. It was almost stillborn. The 1973 fuel crisis, combined with Italy's 38% tax on engines over 2 litres, decimated any chance of the Alfa 6 being a success, meaning the V6's future was uncertain. Not even a more sensible 2-litre version of the engine could improve sales of the Alfa 6. So Alfa Romeo changed course and did the most sensible next thing to do during turbulent times, which was to go racing. Because of course they did. With performance as the new priority, the Busso was bored out to 3 litres and mounted in a much racier package, with a name that gave appropriate respect to the engine, the GT V6, and it even finally swapped carburetors for a more modern fuel injection system, which kind of begs the question, why did Alfa choose to stick with carbs for so long?
Using carbs meant that the 2.5 litre had throttle response to shame its rivals, but there were plenty of other reasons why people loved the V6 Busso motor. Firstly, it was a V6, so compared to those famously smooth inline 6 rivals, it had a beating heart as you climbed the revs. And this engine sounds so brawny, even from the low to mid-range, that with the roof down, you really get that character from the engine, and so it's more interesting and more exciting more of the time, especially compared to exotic supercars, which were always more about the top end.
And it wasn't just a feast for the ears. I mean, is there a more beautiful mass-produced engine than a Busso with chrome inlet pipes? Best of all, they were added for technical, not aesthetic reasons, so that lovely 3-litre could squeeze under the slender bonnet line of a 164. It didn't look half bad either under the even lovelier bonnet of the Spider 3-litre of the mid-90s.
Plenty of Alfa V6s have also handled really well, and that's no coincidence. A V6 engine is shorter than an inline 6 engine, which means it can be closer to the bulkhead and more centralised with weight distribution, and that has good impacts on both handling and steering. Of course, when it comes to Alfa V6 cars that'll weaken your knees, this has to be the champion. I mean, it literally was a champion because the 155 DTM dominated Germany's championship in 1993, and this one got its fair share of victories in the 1996 season. Of course, much of that was thanks to the 2.5 litre V6 Busso in there, which revved to 12,000 RPM.
In fact, the Busso didn't just upset Germany on the racetrack through the 90s, with a 2-litre version of the V6 making use of turbo power to outpunch executive rivals with the 164 turbo. It didn't exactly outsell its rivals, but with fewer cylinders, it was lighter and more punchy than BMW's V8 530i, and more engaging than Mercedes' 2.5 190e.
And I won't be the only one who's drooled over magazine photos of GTA models from the early noughties. In fact, my very own Clio 182 went up against the 147 GTA in Evo magazine way back when. It left me with a lasting love of Alfa Romeos, even if some of them didn't exactly have the most amazing engines or handling, and if, well, some of them were slightly infamous for their reliability.
Over the span of 25 years, the Busso V6 had achieved more than most. It survived an oil crisis, it was used in 19 models across 3 brands, and it took victories on track. With its rich character and distinct exhaust note, it was no wonder that the Busso had cemented itself as one of the greatest engines of all time. But as time went on, the Busso would struggle to keep up with ever more stringent emissions regulations. So, on the 31st of December 2005, Alfa Romeo decided it was time to let the sun set on the much-loved Busso V6. And just 2 days later, somewhat poetically, its creator, Giuseppe Busso, passed away. After that, Alfa Romeo did continue to use V6 engines, but they were based on units supplied by General Motors. They never seemed to really capture the same passionate fervour of the Busso, making it a trying time for Alfa-loving petrolheads. And for a long time, it seemed that Alfa Romeo was destined to be the maker of pretty, but soulless commuter cars, with the occasional passion projects like the V8-powered 8C Competizione and the more attainable but mildly received 4C. It seemed as if Alfa Romeo's best days were behind it. Or maybe Alfa was just taking a page out of Giuseppe's book and spending a decade cooking up something special.
We needn't have worried, of course, because yes, while there were a few years where the Alfa Romeo lineup lacked that special something, in 2015, when the Giulia Quadrifoglio landed, we suddenly had ourselves a super saloon that ticked every Alfa Romeo box. It's beautiful, it has a chassis developed by the genius that also worked on the Ferrari 458 Speciale, Philippe Krief, and it has that all-important final ingredient, an Alfa Romeo V6. And not just any V6 engine, but a 2.9 litre twin turbocharged one. And contrary to what one curly-haired farmer said about this being essentially a Ferrari California engine with 2 cylinders lopped off, it is in fact a completely different motor, albeit one designed by the same person, Gianluca Bivetti.
While his name doesn't exactly roll off the tongue like Busso, no doubt Mr. Bivetti would have taken inspiration from Giuseppe's masterpiece when designing his new one. And while this V6 has its own unique recipe, with 2 3-cylinder banks angled 90 degrees apart, a limit of 7,400 revs per minute, and a firing order of 1-6-3-4-2-5, it has a characterful growl that's muscular, just like the Busso's.
It has tremendous throttle response, and with over 500 horsepower, this Quadrifoglio is genuinely rapid on the road. Plus, it feels light. It feels light on its toes and just as agile as the original Giulia. And yeah, okay, it doesn't have anywhere near as much tech aboard as its present-day German rivals, but I just don't care. And neither do you, it seems, judging by the way Giulias sell so quickly on cinch. This Giulia Quadrifoglio with the V6 feels like a classic, and it feels like a momentous moment in Alfa Romeo's history, not just of now, but forever. All that history is what makes this 33 Stradale so significant, because it represents the end of Alfa V6, and not just temporarily like with the Alfa Busso line, but, well, forever. This car comes, yes, with a V6 with 620 horsepower, but it also comes with 750 horsepower of electric powertrain, meaning it represents the end of one chapter and also the start of another.
Of course, this being an Alfa, it looks to the future with one hand firmly still holding the past. It's not just the name 33 Stradale that makes it the direct descendant of Alfa's late 60s race car, the 33 Tipo, for the road. It also borrows more than just a few lines in its design. It is jaw-droppingly beautiful, but in a modern meets classic way.
And don't be fooled into thinking that the 3 litre in the back of this car is the same as the one in the MC20 from Maserati, because this car does share some parts with that. No, this is a 3 litre version of Alfa's Quadrifoglio V6, and that really matters. It matters because if this is to be a farewell to the Alfa V6, it has to be a genuine one. Plus, this car costs £1.5 million, or so they say. So, yeah, you wouldn't want them half-arsing it, would you? And, well, to be fair, even though this is a prototype, I don't think this thing represents half-arsing at all. Wow.
With the Giulia Quadrifoglio in its twilight years and the Stradale straddling the shift from V6s to an electric future, this engine marks the end of the Alfa's V6 story.
Or is it? Because with the new Junior coming and likely to become a successful cash cow for the brand, and with rumours already circulating that this Stradale might get its own successor, maybe there's life for the V6 after all, if you're very rich. But what about the rest of us? How can we get easy access to a V6? Well, there's always hope of synthetic fuel, or maybe mild hybridisation. That always helps with throttle response, and we know Busso was always a fan of that stuff, don't we?